Hi everyone, and welcome back to Room 9, our region's largest classroom. My name is Miss St. Louis, and I'm a teacher at Rogers Elementary School in the Mehlville School District, and we are located in South St. Louis County. Today, I'm here to teach a reading lesson that's geared towards students who are in the 3rd grade, but all learners are more than welcome to join and explore with us. So let's get started. This week, we are talking about all things comprehension. And you might be wondering to yourself, what is comprehension? Well, comprehension is the process of a reader making meaning of a text. So when we read books, there's two things that we do. We read, but we also understand our reading. And sometimes understanding what we read can be a lot harder than reading the books, right? When we understand what we're reading, we are actively thinking about the words that we are reading in a text, right? Whether that be we're thinking about why characters do things, or why the author wrote this book, or what does this word really mean, right? While we're reading, our brains are thinking about the words that we are reading. And it's our job as a reader to comprehend or make sense of the text. So, all week, we're going to be talking about different ways that readers make sense of the text that they read. And today, we're going to be talking about monitoring our comprehension. Now, monitoring means that we keep record of our understanding of a text. And, well, there's a few different ways to keep record. But today, I'm going to share with you one of my favorite ways to keep record of understanding a text. So, when we monitor our comprehension, which is keeping the record of a text. Let's stick that up there. I love to use sticky notes in my books. I use them all the time. My books are filled with sticky notes from front cover to back cover. They are everywhere. And well, there's a lot of different ways in which readers choose to use sticky notes. So I want to share with you today how I choose to use mine. And you might want to try what I do, right? And then change it up as you go along. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But using a sticky note is called stopping and jotting. So when we stop and jot, we annotate the text to support our comprehension of the text. So annotating is adding our own thoughts to the side, right? Sometimes we can annotate by highlighting a text. Sometimes we can annotate by circling words or underlining words. We can also annotate, right, by writing in the margins. But we can't do that with every book because not every book is ours, right? If you borrow a book from the library, we're not going to write in our books, right? And highlight words and add our own thoughts. That's not something we can do in a book that we've borrowed. If it's your book, that might be something that you choose to do. But what I like to do is use sticky notes because then I can take those out, okay? So when I use sticky notes, I have a little code that I use to mark down important things I think of as I'm reading a text. And these are the things that I know I can find in almost every one of my books I'm reading. Now, the ones that we're going to talk about today lean themselves more towards a fiction book, but you could use some of them in a nonfiction text as well. So, some of the things that I like to look for as I'm reading a book are, I like to look for surprising parts, right? And so I will always mark a surprising part with a bolt of lightning, right? And so a surprising part is maybe a twist that I never expected, or something that happens that I was just like, whoa, that blew my mind. And if I want to make note of that, I can put my little surprise mark. Something else I look for is predictions, right? Especially when I'm reading longer books, like chapter books. I like to stop at the end of a chapter and think to myself, what could happen next, right? Or if something really exciting is happening, I might stop and say, ooh, I think I know what's gonna happen. Right? This is something that you might do too when maybe you're reading books, or if you're watching TV, you might do it at commercial breaks, right? So this is a good thing that we can do to help us think about what we think is going to happen next, right? Making those predictions. Now, something else that we can do is wonder, right? And we might wonder lots of things, right? Some wonderings we might have are, well, I wonder why the author chose to do that or why he chose to say that. I wonder why the character wanted to do that, or why did the character go in there? Why didn't they turn around, right? There's lots of questions that can be going around and saying, I wonder why that happened, right? So I like to make note of that as I'm reading and think, wonder why that's going on, or I wonder what's going to happen next. And if I wonder what's going to happen next, that could lead me to my prediction, right? Absolutely. Some of these kind of tie in together. Now, a question. I like to make notes of questions, right? Maybe I have questions about what's going on, right? Or did I miss something, right? Questions could be really good spots where I need to go back and reread, right? It might show that, maybe this is a spot where I didn't catch everything that the author meant for me to catch as I was reading the book, and I need to go back and reread to answer my question, right? Maybe about why did that happen, or why did the character do that, right? I might have to go back and reread. So this is a good point for me to monitor my own comprehension and say, do I really know what's going on? But I can also just make note of questions I have, right? And some questions that I have might be, well, I wonder if she's ever going to make it to the end, right? If she's in a race, right? If we're thinking about a character in a race, I wonder if she's going to make it all the way to the end of the race, or is she going to drop out of the race, right? You could ask yourself, I wonder if he's ever going to find the treasure, right? Questions can pop up as you read. So that's another way that you could use the questions. All right, next up, we have funny moments. Now, I love to read books that make me laugh, and because they're just super funny, right? And they have tons of enjoyment in them. So I always like to mark those funny parts, because sometimes those are the parts I want to go back and reread just because they made me laugh out loud, right? Some of the best things that we can do as we read. Now, there's also your favorite parts. Now, sometimes my favorite parts are the parts that make me laugh, but sometimes my favorite parts are just parts that are really well written, right? Or really descriptive. So I can mark those favorite parts with a heart, and I might go back and reread those ones later too. Now, I can also find those unknown words, right? And so I mentioned, right? In these books, I can't highlight words that I don't know because they don't belong to me. So instead of circling or highlighting a word in the book, if I put it on a sticky note and put it there, I might know that at the end of the chapter, I need to go back and I need to use a dictionary or ask my teacher or ask a friend, what does this word mean, right? Because sometimes when we stop, and we try and figure it out in the moment, it can be kind of hard to get back in the book, and we have to go back and reread. So as we're reading, right, if you come across a word you don't know, you can always mark it and come back later to find out that meaning, right? You might have to do a little rereading to make sure that it makes sense, but this is a good way to keep your momentum going while also making note of things that you have some questions about, right? With those vocab words that we don't always know. Now, we also have important, right? So there might be characters who are introduced who are really important. There might be things that characters say or do that are really important and I want to make note of, right? And that could be something as simple as a character saying something to another character about a plan, right? That could be a character making a decision to stop something or to start something, right? So important parts are always good to know because we can always come back to those when things happen later and go, oh, yeah, I remember them talking about doing that, right? Those are good things to know. Now, we can also make connections, and we are going to be talking a little bit more about connections later on this week and really practicing making connections as we read a text. But we can put these sticky notes in there, right, to show that I've made a connection in this book, right? That's something that I have made a connection to personally or to another text. So connections is something else that I can make note of. Now, I can also make note of interesting things, right? Whether that be interesting facts, maybe in a nonfiction book, or just interesting things that go along in a text, right? Found this really interesting that they did that, or I found this really interesting that maybe even they chose not to do that. They went a different way, right? So we can point out those parts with this. Ooh, we are running out of space. Let's get this back so we can keep all our pieces there. All right, we've got 2 more. Sad. We can mark sad parts, and you know, sometimes I know we don't always like to read books that are sad, but some books have some parts in them that are a little bit sadder. So we can mark those with a sad face, just so we can keep note of maybe some of those sad parts in a book. And just because a book has sad parts doesn't mean it's a bad book. Some of my favorite books have some sad parts in them. And last, I have character traits, right? As we're reading books, we always like to make sure that we're paying attention to some traits that build to our character, especially with chapter books, because we know that in chapter books, characters can change along the way. And so it's really good to make note of those character traits so that we can kind of see how characters are growing throughout the course of a book. So these are just a few of the things that I like to pay attention to in books. And there's some of the things that I see that I do a lot, right? I make predictions all the time when I read, and I ask myself questions, and I laugh, and sometimes I cry or I find unknown words, right? You might find that you do some of these same things and you want to use some of these same notes, right? But you might also find that you do different things as you read a book, and that's totally normal. And you might have to come up with your own system. So what I challenge you to do is, as you're doing this, get a bookmark, right? And it could just be a simple piece of paper, fold it up, make it a little smaller, and keep track of all the things that you are doing. And eventually you'll come up with your own little coded system that works for you as a reader. Because I'm pretty sure that many of you are doing book clubs at your school, right? And book clubs are where you get together with some of your friends and where you're all reading the same book and you like to talk about it. And if I read the book on Friday, but my book club doesn't start till Monday, I might forget over the weekend what's going on in my book. So having these notes in my book can help me as I go back through to remember, ooh, I remember I wanted to talk about this with my group, or ooh, I wanted to make sure that I asked them this question and see if they had the same question, right? So it's a really good way to monitor your thinking as you're reading, but also to help you to comprehend and understand as it comes back up later in conversation. So today, I would like to practice this skill with you of adding in sticky notes into your own books. All right, so the book that we're going to read today is The Mad Scientist Next Door by Clare DeMarco and Rory Walker. And the back of the book says, Ella always stays out of the way when her mean neighbor, stays out of the way of her mean neighbor, Mr. Willis. But when she has to get her brother's teddy bear out of his yard, Ella is shocked to find out what Mr. Willis is up to. Are you ready? All right. You know, I can already kind of wonder, well, I'm looking at the title, The Mad Scientist Next Door. I'm thinking on the back, shocked to find out what he's up to. Maybe he's doing some sort of mad scientist things. I might be able to make a prediction and even put that on the cover of my book, right? And I might put a P on the cover of my book with a prediction, and I can write down what my prediction is, right? What I think Mr. Ellis is up to, right? So Mr. Ellis is making a secret potion. so that's my prediction, just based on the title and the cover picture and what the hint is on the back. So let's keep reading to see what's going on. Chapter 1. Ella's next door neighbor, Mr. Willis, was mean. The other children didn't like playing near his house. Even cats stayed away from his yard. So Ella kept out of his way. Oh, I can mark that as a character trait for Mr. Ellis, right? So my character trait's my little smiley face. Let's put that on there, and now I know. Starting to get a picture of who Mr. Ellis is, right? He's mean, kids don't want to be in his yard. One day, Ella had an emergency. Her little brother Tom's favorite bear had been catapulted by accident over Mr. Willis's fence. Ella had to get it back before bedtime. Ella fetched the stepladder and put it up against the fence. Peering over, Ella could see Bear. She could also see thick shrubs, so she could not climb over. Well, she's not going to climb over. What is she going to do? Maybe she'll knock on the door. So I can make a prediction about that, right? I can add in a sticky note. She's going to knock on the door. Right? So she's going to knock on the door. That's my prediction. Let's see if he answers or what she does. Suddenly, she could see Mr. Willis staring at her from a window. "You'd better come get it," roared Mr. Willis. Nervously, Ella shuffled up the path to Mr. Willis's front door. The door creaked open. "Come in," growled Mr. Willis. You know what? This is probably an important part. She's going into the scary house. I never thought she'd go in there. So I'm going to mark that with a star, right? That's important. She's going inside? What? Chapter 2. Ella tried to look brave as she walked into the front room. In the corner, she could see Pickles, a cat who belonged to Thea, who lived down the street at number 15. But that's not his cat! What is it doing there? I wonder how it got there. I'm going to put a sticky note to mark that question. Maybe it will be answered later. So I'm going to put my W and I'm going to ask, how did the cat get there? Is the cat a part of his experiment? I don't know. Let's keep reading. Then Ella gulped. This wasn't a front room. It was a lab. There were bottles and jars full of brightly colored liquids. They had tubes and pumps pushing the liquids in and out of them. Wow, gasped Ella. Don't touch anything, barked Mr. Willis. Too late. Ella had poked her finger into a flickering electric current she saw jumping between two bell jars. There was a blinding flash, and the lab flooded with orange light. Uh-oh. That doesn't sound good. Uh-oh. Well, I can definitely mark that this is important because this seems like a really important scene. But I can also use this opportunity to make a prediction. So I'm going to do two things on this sticky note. I'm going to mark that it's important, but I'm also going to make a prediction about what I think is going to happen. Well, flashing light. Maybe they go back in time. Maybe she becomes a cat too. Maybe she disappears. Oof, so many good predictions. I'm going to guess that they go back in time. That's my prediction. All right, let's keep reading. Then, just as suddenly, everything went back to the way it was before, except it wasn't. Now Ella was looking across the room at Ella. What on earth? She started to say, but her voice wasn't her own voice. It was the voice of Mr. Willis. What just happened here? This is kind of an interesting part, because what just happened? They switched bodies. What? Oh my goodness. Chapter 3. Ella watched as her face started to laugh. We've swapped bodies, said Mr. Willis with her voice. I've been trying to do this for years, but I've only ever had cats to practice on before. Now you're me and I'm you. I get to be a child again. Look at that. We already answered some questions, right? Well, I know now my prediction was not correct, but I also know why he has the cat in his house, right? He was trying to switch bodies with the cat. Ella nervously rubbed her prickly Mr. Willis' chin. Mr. Willis was twirling around the room with ponytails flying. Now I will skip and jump. Someone else will do my washing and cook my dinner, he sang happily. Swap us back, shouted Ella. It's not fair. Not likely, scoffed Mr. Willis as he ran past Ella and out the front door. I probably should have marked this, shouldn't I? Yeah, because I answered my question. Sometimes I get so into it I forget to mark my important parts, and I can always go back. Mark that this was important. Ella started to cry. How would she get her body back? How could she live next door to her family without knowing them? And how could they live with Mr. Willis? Getting my name confused. She looked at Mr. Pickles. So that's why the cat stayed away, she thought. Then Ella remembered Bear and wondered what Tom would do when he realized Bear was gone. She cried even harder, but then she smiled. Bear would help Ella get her body back. It's kind of some sad parts here. You might want to mark that. Chapter 4. Ella ran into the garden as fast as her creaky Mr. Willis' knees would let her. She used a rake to hook Bear out of the bushes. Now she needed to get Tom's attention. Ella climbed the tree at the end of the yard. It was hard work in Mr. Willis's old body. Finally, she reached a branch high enough to see over the fence. Luckily, Tom was still playing in the sandpit. She could see Mr. Willis jumping on her bed through her bedroom window. Ooh, she's going to try and stop him. I can make that prediction, right? Little boy, Tom, I have your bear, shouted Ella. She waved the bear at her little brother. Bear, yelled Tom. He stretched out his arm, then his face scrunched up and he started to cry. Ella saw her mom and Mr. Willis come out at the back door. My bear, screamed Tom, wailing louder and louder. He pointed at Ella in the tree. Shh, Tom said, Mom will get Bear back. Mr. Willis, be careful. I'll come over and fetch Bear. No, cried Ella in the tree. Excuse me, said her mother. I want Ella to come and get the bear back. She catapulted into my yard and I want her to apologize. Ella knew she would pay for this, but it had to be better than being Mr. Willis forever. You're quite right, Mr. Willis, said Mom. But Mom, wheedled Mr. Willis. That's enough from you, Ella, said her mother sternly. You will go back and apologize to Mr. Willis. Then you can bring Bear back. Mr. Willis looked furious. Ooh, I think she's going to try and swap him back. I've got a prediction. I think she's going to try. Chapter 5. Ella didn't waste time. She jumped out of the tree, twisting her ankle as she landed. Oh, well, she thought. Serves him right. It won't be my ankle for much longer. Ella hopped into the house with Bear. She left the front door slightly open. Then she set everything up exactly as it had been when the swap first happened. There! Pickles was in the corner. The little electric current was still flickering between the two bell jars. Ella left Bear exactly on the spot where Mr. Willis had been standing before. She stood right beside the current. The doorbell rang. It's open, called Ella. You'll have to come in yourself. I hurt my ankle. In you go, Ella heard her mother say. Mr. Willis shuffled in with Ella's mother behind him. It's getting ready to happen. As Mr. Willis reached up to pick up Bear, Ella poked her finger in the flickering electric current between the jars again. There was another blinding flash. Then everything was as the way it was before. Ella could hardly bear to open her eyes. What if it hadn't worked? Then she felt her mother's hand on her back. Hurry up, Ella. Oh, that was important. That's what happened. Ella opened her eyes and saw Mr. Willis and Mr. Willis's body. She started to laugh. Mr. Willis looked miserable. I only wanted to play, he said sadly. Oh, he just wants some friends. I can mark that as being a sad part, right? He's not feeling... Pardon me, said Ella's mom. Ella, I don't know why you're laughing. Mr. Willis now has a bad ankle because of you. Don't worry, Mr. Ellis. Ella will help you with your washing and cooking until your ankle heals. That will be her punishment for catapulting Bear. Mr. Willis started to laugh. But Mom, cried Ella. Ooh, the end. I wonder what happens when she helps him. Maybe there will be a sequel coming soon. Wow, look at all these sticky notes that we were able to add as we were monitoring our thinking, right? So as we're reading, it's really important not only to read the words, but to be actively thinking and using your brain about what's going on and why characters are doing things. And using sticky notes and some annotating can be really, really helpful to help you keep track of your thinking as you're going along. We know with longer texts, like chapter books, that we don't finish them all in one day. It might take us a few days. And so keeping track of our thinking can help us from day to day to think about, oh, this is what happened yesterday. Here's what I think is going to happen today. Here's why it might happen. And here's what I know about my characters and so many more things. So I challenge you that as you're reading your books at home or at school, get some sticky notes and practice annotating your books to help monitoring your thinking. I hope that you'll find it very helpful in keeping track of your comprehension of text. So, boys and girls, that was our lesson for today, and I hope that you'll join us back tomorrow as we continue to talk all about comprehension and ways to think about your books. Until then, I hope you have a great night. Bye, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Teaching in Room 9 is made possible with support of Bank of America, Dana Brown Charitable Trust, Emerson, and viewers like you.